Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. And good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on this Women in Wellness Wednesday. And let's get started with honoring God with our body. So God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears and help me listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help our hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. And God, please protect our reproductive organs. Help us to honor you, God, with purity. God, please help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet as we walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And if you are joining us for the first time this morning on Unfiltered Vision News, this is something that I do try to say daily. Sometimes, I know it's my fault, I get caught up and I get excited about the news and I forget. So I'm trying to do better to make sure that we start off the day properly. Now with that, we're going to get into a few topics that I found on X. So these are some trending topics that I found very interesting. And so interesting. So the first one, and yeah, it is what you guys are seeing right here. Apparently, a Denver public school board just voted unanimously to dismiss LGBTQ teacher Jennifer Hunka after she reportedly made female students kiss each other and graded them on it. So what's going on in these schools? What? Huh? And it's sad because this is abuse happening to our children, because what parent would allow this? Probably none. But do they even know that this is going on? And it's just so sad. So let's just listen to the short video.
I move that the board hereby accepts both the evidentiary and ultimate findings of fact of the hearing officer, the recommendation of the hearing officer that Ms. Jennifer Honka be dismissed on the grounds of incompetence and neglect of duty, and that the board enter its written order as required by TACTA that Ms. Honka be dismissed with immediate effect.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the floor is now open for debate. Seeing none, Ms. Atwood, would you please call roll?
Director De La Rosa? Aye. Director Gaitan?
Aye.
Director Hunter? Aye. Director Klein-Molk?
Aye.
Director Sia?
Aye.
Dr. Torres?
Aye.
Mr. Youngquist?
Yes.
Thank you. With that, the motion passes. Thank you, David.
Now, what's interesting is, yes, she was removed from her position, but is she going to be arrested for this? Because this is straight pedophilia. Straight up. We don't arrest pedophiles anymore? That's my whole thing. Like, where are the arrests? And maybe it's because the people that act like this behind closed doors, they're in charge. There's no other way. Either you're arresting people or you're a part of it, and that's it. There's no gray area ever. Now, this next one we're going to get into. This is Laura Logan, and she just broke down a pattern that hits different once you see it. You know, she says they keep creating problems that can never actually be solved. Racism that's unconscious, masculinity as inherently toxic, CO2 as the enemy, even though we breathe it out, and differences. And she'll get more into it in the video. But at the end of the day, and it's interesting that nobody's saying this is this cult behavior. If you are not doing what the cult wants you to do, they will shout you down. See, you know you are not a part of a cult if you can have a dissenting opinion and a discussion. That's it. Dissenting opinion and a discussion. Now, you can be a part of any type of cult. I was in a cult, and I was in a church, and it was a cult. Yeah. Because if you dissented, it was like, you can't dissent. Wait a minute, what? I can't have another opinion? You know, I've got to live my life the way you think I should be living my life. Now, yes, there are biblical guides. But when you start turning yourself into God and trying to lord things over people, you're doing exactly what the Bible says not to do. And that's what happened, right? In short, in my situation. But in my opinion, what she's talking about, it is a cult mindset. It really, really is. It's very sad.
So for these people, they cannot have you ask questions of substance because everything is built on a lie. Climate, all those climate programs, all built on lies. The whole race narrative, all built on lies. Does that mean there's no racism? Does that mean there's no difference? No. But what do? They want to take race, they want to take differences, and they want to create them, turn them into problems which can never, ever be solved. Okay. So the color of your skin, you can't change it. Therefore, you can never solve this problem. Yep. Unbiased racism, it's unconscious. If you're not conscious of it, you can't fix it. So, and if you look in all of these places, they create issues. Like as a man, you're going to have masculine instincts. They now teach you that masculine instinct is evil. It's a problem can never be solved. CO2. We create CO2 as we breathe out. It's critical for life on Earth. You will never, ever. They created a nonsense problem that can also never be solved because to remove CO2 from the Earth is to kill all life on Earth. So once you start to recognize the tactics, it becomes very, very simple. It's easy. You don't have to be a genius to see the same tactics playing out over and over again. Transgenderism, it's the same thing. This is an attack on us as we were created to break down communication, to isolate us so that we can be controlled. Why do they have to kill the food supply? Because they have to control what we eat. We have to control our movements.
Yeah. And that's a cult. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. This is an interesting breakdown. Now, this last one we're going to get into, and this is an update pretty much. So a federal judge has upheld the felony conviction against former Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan, who was found guilty of helping an illegal evade ICE agents at the courthouse. Dugan now faces up to 5 years in prison, disbarment, and steep fines. Yeah. So this is Judge Dugan. She was taking another judge along with her. And the interesting thing is, I think they're not supposed to wear their robes in certain areas, and she was literally guiding them out of the courthouse because the ICE agents were there to pick up those two gentlemen that were sitting there because they had deportation orders. So, nobody's being disappeared. They had deportation orders, and she literally helped them evade ICE. So I'm glad, because now this does set a precedent. So hopefully other individuals will not do this. It is a crime. Okay. It is called Title 18, Section 111, when you purposely impede an investigation of a federal agent. Do not do that. And also a violation of Title 8, Section 1324, harboring illegal aliens. That could be considered harborment because she removed them from one place to another and she helped them, and, basically protected them. What are you doing? What is going on? Now let's get into a few of our headlines from all sides. Now, the first one, it talks about the geopolitical consequences of the Iran war. And we're going to see, especially now that they've gotten this written agreement, there's still going to be a lot of back and forth of what's happened. So stay tuned. MLB players issued warning over handwritten Bible verses on Pride Night caps. What? So it's okay for one religion, and it is a religion. It is a cult. I call it a cult because of the way they are trying to demand everybody else be a part of what they're doing, right? But if you dissent and say, hey, I want to write a Bible verse, what? You're going to be given a warning? We are in a country where it's freedom of religion. Whether you're in a cult or not, you can't tell people what they cannot do religiously, right? You just can't do things that are illegal within your said religion. And I've been calling it a religion for a long time. And it's a cult in the sense that if you don't agree with them, you're wrong. You have to agree. You have to. No, we don't. Nobody has to support anything you're doing. Now, I'll respect you as a human being, but I don't have to support what you're doing. You don't have to support what I'm doing. That's okay, right? Now, the next article, it says, Education Department offloads special ed civil rights responsibility to other agencies. I wanted to take a quick look at this because I hadn't seen it before. And I wanted to see what we're actually talking about. So the Education Secretary Linda McMahon announced that the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Education Department would move its program to the Health and Human Services Department and reassign the Office for Civil Rights Responsibility to the Justice Department. Okay. Outlets on the left questioned how these changes could negatively impact students with disabilities, while right-leaning perspectives highlighted the progress towards President Trump's goal of dismantling the education department entirely. I see this as actually a win for special education, mainly because now with Health and Human Services, they'll actually be able to get more studies done, understanding what's happening in that space specifically with those individuals. And then for the Office for Civil Rights Responsibilities. See, people, and a lot of people, this is the first time they've heard of the Office of Civil Rights. Well, actually, it was put in place in 1965 after the Civil Rights Voting Act. And actually, it was a specific set aside for Black Americans that were affected and their civil rights affected, so that there would basically be a designated office if their civil rights were violated, they could go to, and somebody was there to fight on their behalf with resources. Well, it soon became people of color, then BIPOC, then, you know, it's your gender and your race and this, and it's none of those things. None of those things. But it is funded annually, right? In the appropriations package. Every year, Congress passes so much money for the Office of Civil Rights. So the Office of Civil Rights is not going away, but the Special Education and Rehabilitative Services is being moved from there to the DOJ. So now families that have been wronged by maybe their state or, you know, uh, some local municipalities, they can actually go to the DOJ and make these reports, and the DOJ has to investigate it. And they do have the manpower and the resources to do that, which is where it should have been all along. Why are you in an office that you don't belong in? So I do appreciate what Linda McMahon did with this one, because again, this is another move removing a group from the Office of Civil Rights that shouldn't be there. So I'm okay with it. I like it. I'm good with it. Now we are going to get into our next update from Promethean.
People scratch their head and they say, why hasn't he bombed the crap out of everything in Iran? Or why hasn't he done this? Why hasn't he done that? Well, first of all, if people are looking at it from the standpoint of the issue is Iran, then they're not going to understand anything that Donald Trump is doing. Secondly, what he is trying to do is also create the conditions where there is something of this country left. For all the peaceniks out there who get their panties in a bunch about Donald Trump, the guy could have bombed them back to the Stone Age 2 months ago. He clearly doesn't want to, just like he didn't want to send in an invading army to Venezuela. He's trying to create the circumstances in a much more difficult situation than Venezuela, where something organic can emerge from within that nation so that they can actually govern themselves. And in order to do that, you actually still have to have some economy left. You have to have an infrastructure. I think strategically, the Iranian military has been fatally, mortally crippled. Their defense industrial base has been mortally crippled. Their economy is crippled by the closure of the strait and the fact that they have no place to store any more oil. And Scott Bessent is carrying out Operation Economic Fury, closing off billions and billions of dollars of flows, including crypto, that the IRGC has used. You think about this. Think about the wars that we've been dragged into and the hundreds of thousands of people who have died on our side among civilian populations in the Mideast. The horror of that over the past several decades. And look at what he is doing in terms of trying to strategically change what Iran is without that devastation and death. Now, where a lot of the pressure comes from in terms of why isn't he bombing the crap out of them, is we're all sitting there saying, oh my God, we know the effect that this is having on the American people as we go into the midterm elections. I hope this gets over soon. But you do not want to trade that off against the fact that he is moving strategically to carry out a fundamental shift, breaking 100 years of British imperial control. This is one of the last nodal points in terms of that. And yet he's trying to do it without destroying a nation and killing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. That's pretty amazing. And I think people need to take a breath and think about that.
Okay, so that was our update from Promethean. I like our updates. They're short, quick, to the point. And good morning, sincere for real. Appreciate you stopping by. Now, this is another update from the different primaries that we just had. We actually had a special primary election here in Georgia yesterday, and there were some different primaries going on across the country.
Primary night right here in America, and with results pouring in from 4 separate states, along with our nation's capital in D.C., our very own Kevin Cork breaking it all down. All right, Kevin, you got all the details. 4 races, NDC, big night.
Big night indeed, my friend, and another series of litmus tests, if you will, for the coveted Trump endorsement, especially for those GOP candidates that find themselves in races, especially those runoffs. Let me take it to the great state of Georgia first, Sean, and that's where we find the president backing Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones over successful businessman Rick Jackson in the state's gubernatorial race, and it's still too soon to call, but so far, so good for Jackson. Meantime, in the Senate, that one's already in the books. The president backed Collins. He comes away as a winner, does Mike, over Brian Kemp-backed former football coach Derek Dooley. How about Alabama? Another Senate runoff to tell you about there. Congressman Barry Moore and a real toss-up against former Navy SEAL Jared Hudson. Despite a major cash advantage, a very tight race, too soon to call, although Moore looks to be in the catbird seat at this hour. How about the Sooner State of Oklahoma? That's where the president and his allies have backed the former state senator, Mike Mazzei. But Attorney General Gentner Drummond is running a strong race there. We'll keep an eye on that, as well as keeping an eye on what's happening here in the nation's capital, a mayoral race. Former Councilman Kenyon McDuffie and Progressive Council member Janice Lewis going head-to-head. The city continues to lurch leftward. If you didn't know that, you know now. We'll see if that continues to be the case tonight. That's making a lot of people here in the nation's capital just a bit nervous. I'll keep an eye on it for you, but for now, Sean, back to you.
Kevin, you're the one guy in D.C. that never gets nervous, so I know that part.
You're right.
Kevin Cork, thank you. All right, thanks.
Yeah. And it's interesting because DC is very heavily Democrat. It's interesting. I've got a chance to visit the nation's capital a couple of times. Again, very interesting. Now, the person that I wanted to highlight today, she's actually been on the show before, and she's on another podcast right now, giving her take, is Janelle King. So hi to you, Ms. Janelle King, and I'm so grateful for your husband's run for Secretary of State. He did not, unfortunately, get to the primaries, so we'll see him in the general election. But I do appreciate him running for office, and also for her serving with our State Board of Elections. So let's get into a little bit of her take about what's happened so far.
Runoff that we were going to talk about coming up here, and obviously I got my votes in early, so that is all done. Sad to see Kelvin's not in there. I was hoping he would get in there, and that's something we could talk about at a later time, because I know you guys put a lot of work in there. But leading up to this, what's going on with the runoff, we can see a lot of things change, especially going into July when it comes to who's going to be in office. So what are your thoughts on just the runoff from an election standpoint, and then what the future is looking like for Georgia in that case?
I think the runoff showed me two things. One, I do have some questions. I'm looking at the results of not just my husband's race, but other races. And, I have some questions about what's going on here. At my house, I kind of jokingly would say, man, I feel like somebody's getting Spencered over here. And if you know what's going in LA, you get that. But either way, I'm like, it just seems like all the good candidates seem to find their way in third place somehow.
That's
but
crazy.
Anyway,
yeah.
With that being said, that's just me. Like I said, let me take my tinfoil off. But when it comes to the runoff on the other side of it, I was looking at turnout. Turnout was terrible. In the state of Georgia, we have about 10 million people, I think it is. That being said, about 7 million, and that's if you're, using the dirty voter rolls, we can reduce that probably to about 5 million. And it's actual registered voters, right?
Yep.
But then on top of that, you only have about 2 million of that group that actually votes. And then of the 2 million, I think it's even less than 1% that who knows who they're voting for. So what are we doing as a people? And, I know before we started the show, I mentioned to you about the book Atlas Shrugged, which basically says, that it sets up this illusion that there are the producers, those who are the innovators, the business owners, the job creators, like all of these people that are sustaining, right? The folks that are putting the word out, educating folks, being active, that we're all kind of holding the world up. And she says, what happens when those people just shrug? Not a full, step away, but I'm just a little tired of always being the punching bag. from the moochers, which are people who don't participate, but always got something to say. And so I think that's what where we are right now. We got a bunch of people that got a lot to say, but are not really participating. We have a bunch of people who don't understand that understanding our civic duty is a responsibility. It's not optional, and that the republic is not going to withstand without you.
Yeah.
So for those who didn't vote or voted based off of what somebody told them, or didn't even do a simple Google search of the candidates, then shame on you, because you're going to continue to get what you're getting. I think that the state is, in looking at this runoff, it's just raggedy. My husband endorsed 2 candidates because we saw them on the trail.
Yeah.
Mike Collins and Burt Jones.
Yep.
They were the only 2 that I see in the runoff that I think are even worthy of really being there. And when it comes to this, there were others that did a lot, we saw, but I'm also hearing things behind the scenes, and, they're not necessarily who they say they are, and all this stuff. And it's just a mess. So at this point, I think we need to focus on the top of the ticket.
Yeah.
Because the Democrat Party is strong. I think the Republican Party continues to underestimate Keisha Bottoms and John Ossoff. And I think as a result of that, you're going to find yourself continuing to lose races. And we are most certainly in jeopardy. We have low turnout. We talk about factions. I'm not concerned with the MAGA versus the establishment faction. I'm concerned with the evangelicals who are like, I'm submitted to God and I don't care about this anymore faction.
Yeah, right.
And the apathetic, I don't think my vote counts faction. Those are the factions I'm concerned about. So, right, you have all of that, which favors the Republican side. So that means turnout may be very low and may not, be positive for us. You could possibly walk Democrats in there. And then on top of that, when you have folks we have a leader, our governor put out a ticket of candidates that I feel is the weakest ticket I've ever seen in my life. Why would you put a candidate at the top of the ticket who hasn't voted in 20 years? How vulnerable. What are we doing?
Yeah, we'll be talking about him later.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is.
And then I watched your video too about the family. And then we got the finances and the Democrats, calling on investigations. Here we are again. So I think we have a weak bench. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I've heard some people say, is it going to be easier to snatch it away from the Democrats in 4 years?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be easier to have to continue to literally using our hands and feet pry power out of the hands of those who currently have it? So it's just, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that we don't have candidates that anybody's excited about. So turnout is probably not going to be high.
Yeah, I didn't want to go this deep into the candidates, but I'm glad you brought this up, because my perspective when it came to what I pray, dear God, is Bottoms versus Jones. I thought Keisha becoming the one who's going to be running for governor on that side, it seemed to me like it was almost like the Democrats were throwing this away. Like, people know her history. People are aware of who she is. Obviously, there's certain people that will vote for her because of what she looks like, who she is. But I'm surprised that she was actually the candidate that took place, because to me, it seemed like an easy win for Burt Jones, or if the other guy gets in there, maybe not. So yeah.
Okay, I have a little bit of a different take.
Okay.
I'm not surprised at all at what happened.
Really?
No, not at all. I was following her interviews, and she basically, her message is that I did not leave Atlanta or run away from Atlanta. I left it in a good position. Like, she believes she left in a good position. She says that, the vaccine mandate was out, and so we had vaccines. Biden was in the White House, so you had cover from the federal. So she felt like she moved away so that someone else can step in after she had did her job. Mm-hmm. And there are people that resonate with that. Not only that, but when you say everybody knows, I know we feel that way, but it's not really true. There are a lot of people who don't know. And there are a lot of people who really like her. She is the darling of the Democrat Party.
And I'll leave the rest of the video so you guys can catch up and watch it. But I definitely agree with what she's saying about Keisha Lance Bottoms, because even though the city did burn down and there were a lot of things that happened where Atlanta needed to be repaired and built back up, Keisha Lance Bottoms does tout, well, I left the city with, so much money. And that was due to the federal funding that came through because of the destruction that happened in the city, because of COVID at the time, where, it was the first time the nation had went through that. So there were billions of dollars being thrown at all of these different cities that had suffered, right, to make sure that they were built back up. Obviously, people couldn't go to work. So there were different changes there. So, in my opinion, they played the long game with Keisha Lance Bottoms, because even before she, ran for mayor, people were kind of had rumblings of, would she run for governor one day. So I'm really not surprised that she's actually running for governor, that she got the nomination. This was a long game. And when people talk about the long and the short game, that's what they're talking about. But at the same time, this turnout, and there are going to be some Republicans that's like, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Rick Jackson to get behind the party. And it's unfortunate that politics has come to that, because we really, in my opinion, there's no servant of the people in both the Democrat and Republican Party, because you don't hear about how they're actually going to help make Georgia a better state for the individuals that live here. We're talking more about the personalities, right? And the disagreement we have with certain track records, but there's nothing said about how you're going to serve the people. Yeah. And that's why I started the USA Redemption Party. So definitely check us out at usaredemptionparty.com. And with that, we will end our broadcast for today for our Women in Wellness Wednesday. And today was more so about political wellness, right? And making sure that you don't get involved in a cult. So we will finish up today, but thank you so much for joining us. And someone says the unification of Americans would be a start. Yeah. We definitely need to start there, because you know what? No, nobody likes anybody. Nobody really has the warm fuzzies. But here's the thing. We should still be able to stand shoulder to shoulder to make sure that our country stays sovereign, right? And that's really what's important. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.